Once again, we are seeing more division and infighting inside the Tory party in the middle of chaos and problems across the country. These guys are still too busy fighting each other. This is about the clash and differences between Steve Baker and Suella Braverman. It's quite interesting because we are going to be talking about the relationship between the two before this. But right now, Team Baker, obviously Steve Baker is now minister for Northern Ireland, so he's part of the government, he's part of the establishment. His people have said Steve Baker has now withdrawn his support for Suella Braverman. Why? Because of her rhetoric over the grooming scandal in this country. Because she's been politically incorrect. She's been offensive for telling the truth about what's been happening here for decades. That was completely ignored by national and local establishments and authorities in this country. Now that it's been revealed, it's been exposed, initially thanks to people like Tommy Robinson, who mentioned this years ago, but because he was the wrong messenger, everybody ignored it because they said, well, if the messenger is Tommy and we don't like Tommy, then let's just ignore the message completely. Now it's come out. But people like Steve Baker, they say it's still not really pleasant or politically correct to talk about the background of these people, the culture of these people, mostly from Pakistan and certain countries. So, an ally of Baker said that he strongly objected to Suella Braverman's argument. If she had said that this is a problem predominantly carried out by white men in their own homes, but that in some areas it was carried out by Pakistani men and covered up for political reasons, that would have been fine. But she has heaped shame upon innocent men. It is not that she is stupid, but that she is unwise. I'm not really sure that Suella Braverman actually included innocent men into this, regardless of the skin color. She never said every single person who's brown has been doing this, and no one said that. Because that's not really the case. The situation is actually about, obviously, there's a wider problem. There's a clash of cultures because of the multiculturalism project that was pushed for years and years since the late 90s, and obviously the 2000s was completely on steroid thanks to people like Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and it continued. And David Cameron, who made a speech once and said the multiculturalism has failed, he didn't really do anything about it. He said all the right things, but he didn't do anything about it in terms of action. Now, the interesting thing about the clash between Baker and Braverman is the fact that Steve Baker was Suella Braverman's campaign manager in her leadership election last summer, when she tried to become leader after Boris Johnson resigned. So Steve Baker and Suella Braverman were allies. I mean, he always knew that she's more socially conservative, she's hardcore Brexiteer and everything else. So now somehow it's a surprise that she's social conservative. I don't understand this clash. It also just doesn't help this division and infighting in the middle of this turmoil of what is conservatism in Britain anymore. There's a massive clash. There's a big problem with a lack of movement. Yes, there might be new parties like Reform UK, but in terms of actual movement, what happened to it? Do we actually have some sort of coherent argument for what British conservatism is supposed to be going forward in terms of having advocates to actually do it properly? Yeah, there might be a few left, but not in terms of the national narrative. So it doesn't really help. Now, as a reminder, this is what Suella said about this crisis. She simply said, there have been several reports since the predominance of certain ethnic groups, and I say British Pakistani males, who hold cultural values totally at odds with British people, who see women in a demeaned and illegitimate way, who pursue an outdated and frankly heinous approach in terms of the way they behave. We've got to stamp that out with criminal law and proper safeguarding, and we are only going to do that if, as a society, we face up to the facts and the truth of what's actually going on. I'm not really sure where the problem is with that statement. There is a big problem with the clash of cultures. There is a big problem with the actual crime that's been covered up, and those who got away with it, and they're on the list. What are we going to do about it? It's not just about the appetite in Parliament or having appetite from our government to do something about it, but as a society, we're still not having that conversation because we're not allowed to have that conversation in the mainstream media. That's the problem. Well, we are going to be continuing to talk about that on this channel. It's okay, we still have it. And I still have a bank account so far. We'll see how that goes, how long that will take. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.